All right, welcome to the explainer. On the surface, a match like Sporting CP versus FC Kairat Almaty looks like a total foregone conclusion. I mean, you've got a European giant going up against a Champions League debutant, but what if the real story isn't about who's going to win, but how the game's actually going to unfold? Today, we're breaking down a professional analysis that peels back the curtain on the hidden psychology, the tactics, and the data behind this classic David versus Goliath matchup. And hey, before we jump in, a quick favor. Dear viewers, please subscribe to the channel, support us with your likes and comments, and also join our Telegram channel through the link in the profile for free betting slips and analyses. It really helps us keep these explainers coming.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big picture, right? The whole David versus Goliath setup. Then we'll funnel down, getting more specific, looking at the mind games, the tactics on the pitch, the hard data, and finally, those unpredictable wildcard factors. By the end, you're going to see exactly how all these pieces click together to build a report's final conclusions. Let's get into it. Okay, first things first, let's set the stage. This isn't just a strong team playing a weaker one. No. The report frames this as one of the biggest quality gaps, a huge asymmetry you're going to see in European football. And when you look at it side by side, that gap is just massive. In one corner, you've got Sporting, a powerhouse in Portugal, tons of European experience, and a seriously scary attack. And in the other corner, FC Kairat Almaty from Kazakhstan. They're making their debut at this level, and as we're about to find out, they're completely hobbled by some critical player absences. The numbers really tell the story here. The analysis crunched all the data and came up with a win probability for Sporting of over 90%. So yeah, the question isn't who's going to win. The whole point of this analysis is to dig deeper than that obvious fact, to find the nuance and understand how this game is likely to play out. So if the result is pretty much a sure thing, what's going on in everyone's heads? Let's talk about the psychology, because this is where it gets really interesting. How does a lopsided match like this affect the fans? Well, the answer is kind of paradoxical. This question gets to the very heart of the psychological weirdness of this matchup. You've got two groups of fans who are both super happy and positive, but they're living in completely different realities. Check out that core motivation column. That's the key. For Sporting fans, their positivity comes from an expectation of just dominating. But for the Kairat fans, their positivity is actually even higher, and it's all about celebration. Just by being there, on the same stage as Europe's elite, they've already won. This quote from the report just nails it, doesn't it? For Sporting, it's about the margin of victory. For Kairat, the final score is almost an afterthought compared to the achievement itself. This basically takes all the performance pressure off the visiting team, which is a really rare and fascinating psychological wrinkle. Okay, so how does this massive gap in quality and mindset actually look on the field? Well, the analysis lays out a super clear, predictable story of how this match is expected to go. The report breaks the game down into 4 acts. It kicks off with the siege, where Sporting will just have the ball the whole time, pinning Kairat in their own half. Then comes the breakthrough, where Sporting's talent starts to poke holes in their defense. But phase 3, the collapse, that's the tipping point. The analysis predicts that the first goal won't just change the score. It's going to shatter Kairat's game plan and could open the floodgates. The last phase is just damage control for the visitors. Time for the hard numbers. Now, when you're analyzing a matchup this lopsided, one of the biggest mistakes you can make is comparing apples and oranges, data from 2 totally different contexts. The report avoids this trap by focusing on something it calls the qualifier cliff. Before we get into the data, just a quick reminder on expected goals, or XG. It's not about how many shots you take, it's about the quality of those shots. A high XG means you're creating really, really good chances to score. And this is the qualifier cliff in action. Just look at Kairat's numbers. In their domestic league, where they're a top team, they're generating a solid 2.0 expected goals per game. Very respectable. But the moment they stepped up to the Champions League qualifiers against better opponents, their attack just completely disappeared. Their XG was more than cut in half. Using their domestic stats would paint a totally false picture of what they can do at this level. A 56% drop. Think about that for a second. That number is just staggering. It shows you a team whose entire offensive game plan evaporates when they're not the big fish in a small pond anymore. This is a crucial piece of the puzzle for understanding why the report is so doubtful about them even scoring a goal. Performance data is huge, but it's not the whole story, right? The report also digs into several wildcard factors that tip the scales even more in Sporting's favor.
Yikes, this is just a nightmare scenario for Kairat. The entire spine of their team is missing, their star attacker is out on suspension, their number one goalie is injured, which means a less experienced backup has to step in, and to top it off, their two main strikers are also out. So you've got no reliable keeper and almost zero goal threat up front. It's brutal.
And if the injury crisis wasn't bad enough, look at these other factors. Kairat had to make one of the longest trips in Champions League history, almost 7,000 kilometers. That's going to lead to some serious fatigue. And the referee for the match, Damian Silvestrak, is known for handing out a lot of yellow cards. In a game where one team is just going to be desperately defending for 90 minutes, that is a recipe for trouble.
Okay, so we've looked at the quality gap, the psychology, the tactics, the data, and the wildcards. The final step in the analysis is to put it all together and see what conclusions we can draw.
And here's where it all lands. The logic for each of these selections flows directly from everything we've just talked about. The high goal count, that comes from Sporting's powerful attack facing a depleted Kairat defense. The both teams to score no, that's a direct result of Kairat's crippling injuries up front and that massive 56% drop in their European XG. And finally, the high card count? Well, you take a card-happy ref and you add in the pressure cooker of Kairat's frustration from defending all game, and that's what you get.
Now, it is really, really important that we're clear on this. What we've just done is explain a third-party analysis. This is purely for informational purposes and is absolutely not financial or investment advice. Please remember that.
So what this all shows us is that even in a match that seems totally predictable, a really deep analysis can uncover all these layers of strategies, psychology, and data that tell a much more fascinating story. And that leaves us with one final question for you to think about. The next time you watch an event that seems like a foregone conclusion, what hidden stories might be buried in the data? Thanks for tuning in.